Ancient voices call our names through the fire and the flames. Demons are real, feel the fear, them whispers and sing your ear.
Up in the sky, what do I see? A UFO is looking at me. Lights flashing all around, bass bumping from the ground. Aliens grooving to the beat, hip-hop rhythms got them on their feet. Strange beings shaped to the flow, spaceships rocking to the show. I see a UFO flying high in the night, moving to the sound, everything's alright. Dancing the stars and neon light, hop to the beat till the morning light. I see a UFO flying high in the night, moving to the sound, everything's alright. Dancing in the stars under neon light, hop to the beat till the morning bright. I see a UFO flying high in the night, moving to the sound, everything's alright. Dancing the stars and neon light, hop to the beat till the morning bright. I'm the god, I rise and shine. In this realm I'm divine. Like the world was just a sign. Feel the power, it's all mine. All mine. Thunder claps, the sky obeys. In my hands lightning plays. Mountains bow, the ocean sway. I command night and day. I'm a god, feel the force. Every star on my course. Follow me, I'm the source. Life itself, no remorse. From the clouds to the ground, in my glory you are found.
Yeah. And okay. Is what? What? Hello? Oh, there we go. All right. For some reason, that was blank as a mother for forever. And all right. Good morning. Good wonderful morning. We are very excited. I'm so glad to be here today. Last week we had some life situations, so we had to not go. But the week before we did a great episode. And today's continuation of this episode and of the topic, we've been talking about, if you're looking down on your screen, also if you're on Twitch or whatever, you see that we have the what is it? comment. It's not a hashtag. It's whatever. Says about Zen Buddhism. We are all about Zen Buddhism here, but it's interesting because Zen Buddhism in Japanese is very different from Zen Buddhism in other places. In Japanese culture, Zen Buddhism was adopted by the samurai and moved into their own realm and their own sort of life, and how it could how they warped it to fit their frame of life and their frame of reference is absolutely incredible. And they took it to such an extent to allow for the the warrior mind, the warrior mentality. It's incredible to me because if you look at other cultures and especially like Western civilizations and whatever, you look and they're either a warrior culture or not a warrior culture. There's no like cross reference in between. There's no difference between like there's no middle ground is what I'm trying to get at. But in Japanese culture, the movement of the samurai into the Zen Buddhist way of life is that middle ground. They literally believed that to be part of the warrior way and the warrior mind and the samurai mind was to also recognize that you can be peaceful. You can be a man of the people. You don't have to be angry and aggressive. And in fact, if you see a lot of these like samurai depictions or in the days, you see that they look serious, but they're also very calm, you know, and even when fighting in a battle with their swords, literally with their swords out, battling some guy, even then, the idea was to keep that calm, serene mentality, that mind state of peace and bliss. And the reason is because and they the most successful samurai had this calm state of mind while they were in battle. Now, see, the problem with I was listening to a lot of different books recently, and catching myself up on this topic, so it refreshes to the forefront of my memory. And you know, they in a way, there's a lot of text that basically says sitting in meditation for long periods of time or only doing meditation for long periods of time is stupid. That's what they say. And the reason they say that is because they think, oh, it's not, realistic. It's not the way that they would, you can't live your life that way. They basically said, look, bro, people get angry, people get happy, people get sad, people get mad, people get offended, it's your personality, it's the way of the world. How you deal with it is what matters. People are allowed to be okay. You can be a Buddhist believer and a philosopher and a advocate for peace and still carry a sword, because you know it it the sword shows your strength, sure, but what really shows your strength is how you carry yourself into it, the peace that you're able to show, the life that you're able to show. It's absolutely incredible. And they would look at this and they would say, look, because of the fact that everybody has emotions, everybody has feelings, everybody has things going on, it's impossible to be this happy, serene, peaceful person all the time. And in fact, if you read Buddhism straight away from Siddhartha Gautama, the original Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama. What did I say? Siddhartha? Siddhartha Gautama. Okay. The original Buddha, if you read his text, What he says is it's almost near impossible for any person to obtain enlightenment and through serene peace and all that. Why? Because life is suffering. Life, that was the first pillar of Buddhism, the first thought he had, the first realization that Buddha had. Life is suffering. No matter what you do, you're always going to suffer in some sort of way, financially, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. Somehow you're suffering. And that's just a part of life, and that's okay. It's okay for you to suffer because life is how it is. It's okay for all of this. That's what you don't understand is Buddha wasn't saying that you need to be this calm, serene, peaceful person all the time. What he was saying is it's okay, dude. Life is suffering. It's terrible. It sucks, but it's all right. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a part of life. And in a way, the Zen Buddhists who believe these things, this is exactly what Buddha was talking about. You're going to have to be a soldier at some point. You're going to have to be a warrior, a leader, a commander, or something. You're going to have to do something. You can't just sit around and meditate all the time. You have to be a part of life. Life is literally meant to be lived, not to be sit around all the time. But it doesn't mean you can't meditate. Okay, it means that meditation is a tool to be used. It's not meant to be the only thing you do. That's what we're trying to say. And that's what Buddha was trying to say. And that's what the Zen Buddhists in Japan were believing during the samurai times. This is exactly what they thought and what they believed. And it's right. It is the correct answer. Life is suffering, dude. There's all this shit going on. Life is terrible. Everything is awful. But so what? Who cares, dude? That's just a part of life. You know, today I might be happy. Tomorrow I might be upset. Oh, all right. And then the next day I might be happy again. You know why? Because that's life, dude. And to emphasize the point that this is exactly what Buddha thought and not the whole meditate forever and peaceful mentality and all that, especially our Western view of meditation. The proof is because one of the things Buddha wanted to do, and we talked about this, if you listen to the quick bonus episode, what happened is a few weeks ago, I was streaming just some games and chatting and whatever, and I got tired of playing the games, and I knew I had some work to do. So I flew on the AI and I was like, listen, I'm just going to talk to it. So what I did was I ripped out the audio from it and released it as a bonus episode for the podcast. It's like 20 minutes. It's pretty good. It was funny for me I actually went back and listened to the whole thing while I was in the office doing a bunch of work. And it was pretty funny. It was ridiculous and funny all at the same time. But if you listen to what we were talking about, you know, it's exactly what we want. I've referenced in there because the AI used as one of the points it was trying to make in order to clarify my point was that it referenced Takamegahara, which is the heaven idea in Shinto Japan. It's the place where the gods are from, the kami. Now, it's really interesting because I compared it to the Buddha's idea of a celestial heaven. Because Buddha had the idea that, look, bro, life is suffering. And we can't escape that. That's what he was trying to tell us. You can't escape it. So Buddha said, well, I want to escape it. And the series of revelations that Buddha had that enlightened him to multiple different abilities and powers and all of that, he had the idea that he wanted to create a separate dimension, a separate world where you could have total peace, total serenity in the world. There was no other thing. And he had this idea. He called it the celestial pure land, the Buddha pure land, they think this of, and everything we think of it all today. This idea is also very similar to the idea of Mount Kailash in India, where you travel the mountain and it's a portal at the top of it that leads you to the celestial realm of the gods, the heaven of the gods. If you put these things together, you start to realize that, dude, life is suffering. All these other cultures, including our Western traditions, believe that there's something else out there. Yeah, there is. Science today is calling it multiple dimensions or alternate dimensions. You know, you have the higher frame of dimensions, which some of them postulate that there are 12. Most Eastern traditions postulate that there are 8 or 9. But our modern day physics and quantum mechanics is pointing to the fact that there are about 10 to 12. So let's just say that there are 8, okay, to come to a agreeable number. All right. What you're and we always talk about how we're in the third dimension. You hear this all through multiple different things. You heard this through different Western traditions, Greek traditions, Greek philosophers, all these different people. Da Vinci talked about it. Lots of people talked about the being in the third dimension. Now, in the third dimension, that where we are, it's because if in a mathematical perspective, you're talking about all your different axes, and then you're talking about the z-axis, which makes a 3D perspective. If you circle around it, that whole area is now a 3D perspective because you're adding length, width, and depth. So what happens is you then begin that there are other dimensions. So higher dimensions would be, you would view all of the lower dimensions and another one. So like some sort of spiritual being would be able to look at the third dimension as if it was looking in some sort of like pool or something, like where it showed them the vision of it or whatever. Like they would look at it from an outside perspective if you were in the fourth dimension. So you go higher and higher up because there are different perspectives. Now we know this, and I've compared this multiple times in other podcast episodes and other conversations, is that we see the universe in what's known as our visible light spectrum. But there's other spectrums of light that other beings can see. We know that cats and dogs can see a little bit more and a little bit less on the spectrum, a little bit outside of our range. So when you think about that, how many beings in the universe can see other things outside of their range? What if, just because we have this little bit, what if somebody else, another being, could see this much plus this much? Well, wouldn't that be another dimension? You would literally be able to see things that I can't see with my naked eye, and maybe not even with a microscope. You know, you would literally be able to see all these different, all these different perspectives of the universe, for kind of what I wanted to say about that. And what's so fascinating is then you realize that there could be a whole nother plethora and expansion of the universe that we will never even see because we physically can't see it with our eyes. And then you go into alternate dimensions, which are the same part of our dimensions, but we call it as time is different. But what really is different is our actions. The universe is the same, but we choose to make different actions, and those different actions lead to different outcomes, and those different outcomes are what is what is defined as the alternate dimension, the side dimension. So, so like if I decided, there's a universe where I decided to not record and do the show today, or maybe there's a universe where I recorded it but didn't do it live. Or there's another alternate dimension where I did it and we went for 12 hours and talking instead of just two. There's a dimension where I talk so fast and so strong that I came to the conclusion in 10 minutes and we were done with the show. It's like all the different possibilities are what make up alternate dimensions. Your perspective on time is just that. It's your perspective. It's that individual person's perspective. It has nothing to do with an alternate dimension. It's just you perceive it as time being an alternate dimension because you perceive time in a linear fashion, because you perceive it as event to event to event, because that's what your mind does. In order to make sense of the world that you're in, you view things as event to event to event. And so does your brain on a subconscious level. So it's very interesting when you go to that. Now, so Buddha thought, well, what if I could make an entire separate dimension? Now, remember, we're talking about 2,500 plus years ago. And this guy is talking about separate dimensions, physics questions. I mean, he's not even talking about it from the perspective of, like, let's say, like a Greek philosopher or something. He's talking about it from the perspective of a modern day physicist. And what's so interesting about this is if you read Hindu scripture, and especially the most ancient ones, the original ones that came from the Vedas, this is exactly what they talk about. So Buddha's idea on this is not new. And what's so interesting is the original Buddha was a noble. He was a prince. He was the most noble. He had access to all these information and books and texts. He read this shit. He read the original Vedic texts, or copies of them, at least, like 2,500 years ago, and these texts are considered to be 5,000 years old or more. So if you're like, remember, it's more than that, because in the text, in Hindu Sanskrit, by the time you get to the Hindu scripture versus the original Vedic scripture, 4,000 years have passed according to the text. So in reality, these books, if the dating is accurate, these books are 8,000 or 9,000 years old. These texts are 8,000 or 9,000 years old. And Buddha would have had access to these. He would have had records of these. He would have had the idea of doing this. And it was so interesting because he then took this and says, well, what if I can do this? And this is where he gets the idea for the spiritual Pure Land. The world, he wants to create a separate dimension where there is no more suffering. There is no more anything. There is no more hurt and pain and sorrow and death and everything. What does that sound like? That sounds like Christianity and Judaism's depiction of heaven, a pure, peaceful, blissful place. It sounds exactly the exact 100% one-to-one ratio of the exact same thing. You're talking about a separate dimension, a separate world that exists, and everything is peaceful. What are we talking about? We're talking about another dimension. So remember, we've spoken about in the past how in ancient times, the word heaven, remember, they called it the heavens, not heaven singular like we call it in our modern day Western terms. They called it the heavens. Every religion did. And the idea of the heavens was whatever lived beyond the clouds. Today we would term that as the atmosphere, as space. So the heavens was anything outside of our atmosphere. And because of that, the celestial pure land, the heaven, was considered to be somewhere out there. What is that? That's another planet, another dimension, another world. And guess what? If you read into all these scriptures, Western tradition, Eastern traditions, Middle Eastern traditions, African, South American traditions, it doesn't make a difference. All of these heavens are inhabited by other beings. Guess what? Who we believe is going in Christianity is going to welcome you into heaven? Peter. He's standing there at the gate. That's another person literally living there. That is another being inhabiting a different world, whether it's another dimension or another planet. And then guess what? You walk into there, and who's there? All these angels. Every angel is there. They're winged beings flying around, walking around, doing this and that. I mean, what does that sound like? That sounds like you went into another world and there were beings who looked similar to you but not exactly the same. And what were they doing? They were freaking living life. Living life is what they were doing. How do you live life in heaven? In our idea of heaven, you don't have to live life anymore. In our Western traditions, and even in other cultures, in Eastern traditions and in other places around the world, the idea of heaven is a universal concept, a peaceful place where there's no more worries of life. There's no more problems in life. There's none of that anymore. You know why? Because it's okay now. Because it's all right. You lived your life. You went through all the suffering and all the problems and the dimensions of your existence and all these things. You did all of that. You don't need to suffer anymore. You don't need to live life. That's what we think is our Western tradition of concept of heaven. So, it's so interesting because you think that, and yet that's not what the text says. Go out there and read the text. Read them all. I've read the Bible dozens of times. I've read the cover to cover 3 times, front to back, as like a literal book. Go and read it. It does not say that this is the peaceful area. In later on in our Christian traditions, you hear that it's this peaceful place and this loving place. But if you read the original text, that's not what it says, bro. There are beings who live there. Chief among them, God. He's the leader. And then who do you have? You have his military advisors. You have General Michael, the Archangel. Right? He's literally the commander of God's military, right? And who was the original commander of God's military? Lucifer. You gotta read the text. And Lucifer took a battalion, a whole legion of God's army and rebelled. And guess what? There's not one war in heaven, but there's 2. And if you read the text, Lucifer wins the first battle and rules over the earth for thousands of years. This is the story of when you get the angels on heaven and Lucifer's followers mating with people. This is where you get the Greek traditions of the gods and Zeus and mating with human beings, all during the same time frame. And then guess what? God comes in and comes back, brings his army back, full force, even stronger than before, and boom, Lucifer loses, back to square one. Here we go. That's exactly what the text says. There's more than one war in heaven. And yet, if you read our interpretation in modern Christianity, we think that the war in heaven is happening out there. It's not here. It's out there. It's over there in another world, in another dimension. It's not here. Not here. Well, that's not what the text says. The text says that they fight over the earth. That would literally be here, not somewhere else, in another planet, in another dimension, here. We're getting way, I feel like we're getting off topic on the samurai mind, but we're not. I didn't plan to do the weave, but we're doing the weave. So when you get into the depth of these cultures, you realize that this heaven is not peaceful. There's shit going on. There's fighting, there's arguing, there's bickering. Even if you read the texts, God and Lucifer and the other gods are sitting there, the angels are sitting there, and they're having a council meeting. Read the story of Job. In the story of Job, God and Lucifer and the other archangels are having a council meeting. And God says, everything's going fantastic. My plan is working out awesome. These guys love me. They're doing great. We're getting all the shit we need. It's awesome, bro. And Lucifer's like, what are you talking about? Like, are you delusional? Do you not go and spend time among the people? Yeah, they worship you. And God's like, well, look at this guy. He worships me every day. And Lucifer's like, well, yeah, because you give him everything he wants. He's got kids, long life, wealth, property, land, slaves, all these things that a very wealthy person has. So, of course, he's going to worship you because he's got no reason not to worship you. So why don't you give him a reason not to? And God says, okay, good point. Go ahead, you could test him, and we'll see, and we'll use this as an example. And Lucifer goes and kills his kids, makes him go broke as a joke, makes him lose all his property. And in the end, Job is still faithful to God, still worships the Almighty, still does not go against God in this story. So it's so interesting because in our Christian traditions, we think Lucifer's the bad guy. They're at war all the time. And yet here they are having a council meeting, hanging out. Somebody brought the coffee. Speaking of coffee, somebody brought the coffee and donuts. Take a sip of coffee. Those likes and retweets on X. Love it. And it's so interesting because we're going, because all these different cultures view the world in the same way. Life is suffering. And so Zen Buddhists thought, well, yeah, life is suffering, dude. You gotta draw your sword sometimes. We're a samurai after all. We are warriors. We fight. We fight for what we believe in. We fight for honor. We fight for this and that. And, they say, well, we can't give this up. We're still going to have to fight tomorrow. And if I stop fighting today, my enemies won't stop fighting today. Your enemies won't stop fighting today. Just because we sit here and meditate and are peaceful doesn't mean the next guy is going to be peaceful. doesn't mean the next guy is going to sit there and meditate with us. And, so you can't just be peaceful or not peaceful, because not peaceful, what happens? You turn into a tyrant, you turn evil, you do bad things, and you convince your mind that it's for the quote unquote greater good, right? And there's fiction novels and stories and real stories from history and fantasy novels and video games, and all this stuff is literally brought about the same way. It's brought about by being too much of one thing. And you look at failed kingdoms and failed wars and governments, and what are they always attributed to? To a weak ruler, to a weak king, to all these different things because they weren't strong enough, right? So, what's the answer? The answer is you have to be both. You have to be both a warrior and a peacemaker. This is the samurai mind. You must be loving but stern, kind but fierce, soft but tough, weak and strong. You must do all these things because this is part of life. Life is suffering. Shit is not going to get better for you unless you go out and do something about it. Life is meant to be lived. If you don't do something about your life, you're not going to do anything. Nothing is going to happen because you did nothing about it. So, this is why in Zen Buddhism, in the samurai mind in Japan, you have the same people being both wonderful murderous killers and unbelievably ruthless poets. And yes, I purposefully switched the words around because, they believed in this mentality. When they had this mentality, they always believed that the killing was part of life. But then when they started to develop this Zen Buddhist mentality, the samurai would only draw their blades. They created this whole sense of honor around it. Like if you drew your sword, that was the ultimate last resort. Like if you drew your sword, you 150 billion% meant to use it. And that's how they thought. So they tried to do the peaceful action. But they knew it was part of life. They had to fight. They had to do all these things. They had to live it because guess what? It's a part of life. Life is suffering, and the only way you're going to overcome it is if you do something about it. And so these samurai would go out there, and this is why you have some of the most beautiful Japanese poetry being written by some of the most ruthless killers that Japan ever created, because they were both. And also later on, if you look at Japanese history, later on the poetry became almost part of the society. It was like it was like a qualification you had to have to be considered illustrious or noble or even a good person, a wise person. Just a regular person. You had to do these things. Being a poet was being a part of life in this time, and it's so interesting because because they came out with some of the most beautiful poetry. You would think that somebody who just lopped somebody's head off with one swipe of their sword wouldn't be able to tell you about the beautiful blooming cherry blossoms that he sees. But yet, he is. And if you read into some of the poetry, they use a lot of the beautiful flowing cherry blossoms which they're actually talking about the blood flowing from their enemy that they killed. How poetic is that? You're describing the way that the cherry blossom trees, which cherry blossoms are my favorite tree and flower. If you've ever seen them, they're absolutely beautiful, especially right when they bloom. And if you look, a lot of animes also have this. So think like an anime, right? You have cherry blossoms, and the cherry blossom leaves blow in the wind and they flow this way, right? They're flowing in like a current. Imagine that for a second. Now imagine that it's red. You know it's red. Now compare that flowing of the cherry blossom, the red on the breeze, to the color of the blood flowing from your enemy. Beautiful poetry. Absolutely stunning. And this guy, or in our example, which this has happened in many, many poetic stories. This is an example that where the guy we're using is made up, but the examples are real. And these people came and invented the most beautiful poetry ever, and yet they were the most ruthless killers. Why? Because you had to have both. You had to live your life as an honorable person, as a strong poetic person. And you because also not everybody every day and every month or every week or every year was about fighting. Sometimes there were years when nobody fought. There were years when nobody battled each other, and nothing happened. What are the samurai going to do during that time? Well, the Roman soldiers used to go back to their land and till their land and their farming and their property and do all these things. You think the samurai didn't do the same thing? Of course they did, bro. They did the very same things. They went back to their boot making shop, their farm, their whatever they did. They went back to all of that in order to live their life. And then what would they do during that time? They'd work hard. They'd keep their honor. They'd socialize. They'd meet people. They'd go about things, and also you got to remember during this time, the samurai, they a lot of them had what was called concubines. They had their main wife, and then they had their other wives. And the reason is you got to remember too, in this time frame, having one kid was almost a death sentence. It was like a 90-10 chance you were going to die or the kid was going to die, one or the other. And the fact that they lived like I think it was like, what did they say? Living past like 8 meant like you survived. Like you were going to grow up to be an adult. So like imagine that. Imagine having your kid going through all of that, and then for 8 years you're worried that they're going to die because statistically they might not survive. Think about that. That's crazy. So these cultures, including a lot of Western cultures, would have multiple wives. And in Eastern traditions, they did have multiple wives. I'm going to have more coffee. They had multiple wives, and in order to have multiple children. And because it would increase your chances of having that child survive, of you having an heir. That's what it would increase. And so, you may have 10 wives, and all of them give birth to 10 children, and only 2 of them survive. So that's 1 child each, 10 wives, only two kids survive past the age of 8. Crazy to think about, but that was life. That was the kind of suffering that these people went through. This was the kind of suffering that Buddha witnessed in the world and said, enough is enough. I can't take this anymore. The whole world, everybody is suffering all over the place, all over the time. So it's just I have the news on in the background here for breaking news and shit. Take a sip of coffee. We'll continue the conversation. Hold on. That's good coffee. So this is the kind of level of suffering that we're talking about. You got to remember too, poverty all over the world, all over the place. Absolutely crazy. I mean, back then also, you're also not only talking about how, remember, the middle class is a modern invention. There was no middle class back then. You were rich or you were poor, and that was it. Some people got a little bit richer and they may have represented like what would eventually become a middle class, but that was so rare, dude. I mean, look at history. It wasn't a thing. And it's a modern day invention is the middle class. But now Buddha coming out of India, forget a middle class, bro. They literally had the caste system written into their Bible. The caste system was literally written down by the gods and told to us by the gods, and that's why we did it. Because they did, that's why they did it, because they literally had it written down and given to them as a rule by their deities. And what's unbelievable is this is the world that Buddha comes in and says life is suffering. And yet, all over the world, we know that if life is suffering everywhere else too. Guess what? Buddha thought the same thing. Now, how do we incorporate this into the samurai mind? Well, like we said, not all the time is suffering. Not if there's happiness to be lived, there's great things going on in life, there's terrible things going on in life, and that's just the way it is. But you don't have to look at it as being terrible. It doesn't have to be your perspective. You could say, hey, this is terrible, but I'm going to not let it get to me. Now, of course, you have emotions. Of course, you can't be peaceful and calm all the time. Come on, we know this. It's near impossible to be peaceful and calm every damn second of every damn day through every terrible situation. It's impossible. But you can try. And that's the key. Is if you try to do it and you embody it and you act in it in your everyday life, that's the mentality. That's the warrior mind. That's the samurai mindset. Is bringing these mentalities of honor and duty and dignity and belief and faith and all these things and incorporating it into your daily life, into everything as simple as mowing your lawn, farming the land, getting up for the morning. Remember in our podcast episodes and in when we talk to AI and stuff, a lot of the times, especially with our whole community theme, it's so interesting because they believe that this is what it was all about in community and the way you go is because you had to bring this mentality into your everyday life in order to be a honorable, successful, respected person. If you were a samurai and you weren't a very good poet, you would get less respect than the samurai who was a very great poet. And even though your warrior deeds may have been greater than the other guys, it's not It's not, you can't do both. That was the key. You had to go out and do things and try. It was all about trying to do the right thing, to be the right person. This is why they had the idea of you not taking your sword out unless it was the last resort you did, because it was your last option that you had. And the reason for this is because you wanted to, you had to take the most honorable options the whole way. You had to take the most respected option. You had to do everything else before you used the sword. You had to use your diplomacy before you used the sword in order to appeal to the person who was fighting against you. You had to do all these things, and this is part of the belief, because if you just went out and lopped people's heads off, you were a tyrant, you were a crazy person, you did all these different things, and this wasn't right, because they're suffering just as much as you. Buddha said so. And you know what's interesting too is Zen Buddhism in Japan incorporates a lot of other things too. It incorporates small ideas of why was I just drew a blank on the name. Small ideas of Confucianism, and largely correlates to ideas of man, I'm really struggling for the word here. Largely correlates to ideas of Shintoism. Oh my God. I can't believe I forgot that real quick. And what it was so interesting, because it's a combination of multiple different religions and their beliefs. And it's incredible because they incorporated these ideas and just said, yeah, it makes total sense to me, so we'll go with it. And what's so interesting about that too is today in our Western culture, if you were to do that, and some people do that, including myself, if you were to compare other beliefs, that's blasphemy. You can't do that. And yet, we're doing that here in this culture, and it's a part of life. The idea to question things is a part of life. Life isn't stagnant. It isn't the way it is. Life doesn't just happen because it happens. It goes on because that's the way life is. Life is suffering. Life is tragedy. Life is happiness. Life is pure. Life is wonderful. Life is terrible. It's all these different things combined together. And this is what makes up the beauty of the world that we live in. This is what makes up the wonderful life that we live. But it's not all perfect. So, but you had to incorporate all of this into your daily life when we weren't in wartime. It was about being honorable and chivalrous. It was about doing the right thing because it's the right thing. It was about being on the side of justice because it's the right thing to do. It was about doing all these things because it was necessary. It was about protecting your family and your beliefs and everything because it was necessary. And so it you know, it's so incredible to me, because this relates to our modern day life. See, the idea of talking about all of this is, how do we bring the samurai mind and the warrior mind mentality into our modern day life? How do we bring that into the world that we live in? And the answer is two things. One thing is you just have to try to do it. All right? We know you're not perfect. Buddha knows you're not perfect. Everybody knows you're not perfect. In fact, if you think somebody's perfect, you're out of your mind. Your brain is gonzo. You have no idea because you don't understand that what's really happening is is that you need to try to do the right thing. The key here is trying in your everyday life, but you can't just say you tried and then not follow through with it. You have to try and follow through with it. You have to continue on. And, you may make a mistake, you may fail. But if you pick yourself back up again and continue on, you can go and do it. Now, I referenced before, I didn't finish my reference. I was referencing what we talked about in the past of Admiral McRaven's 2000 and what year was his speech? Where 11, where he made 14, was it 14? One or the other, where he made that speech about making your bed and how it's the first task of the day that leads you to other tasks of the day. It's your first success of the day that puts you in that mentality of working towards your goals and your accomplishments. It puts you in that mentality of, I must do this and this and this in order to succeed, at least today, or at least in what I'm doing. So, it's I reference that a lot because it's 100% right, but it's exactly what we're talking about. I wake up, I always make my bed. Now, I always did that before I heard this. I don't know, maybe I did it on some sort of subconscious level. Maybe my mother was great at instilling it into me. I don't know. But I always did that before I heard this. But then when I heard it, I like identified with it right away because I was like, that's correct. When I wake up in the morning and my bed's made, that's one less thing I got to do. That's one thing I already did, and I succeeded in doing it. It was very simple. It's not like it was a crazy thing to do. It's not like it was very difficult, but you still did it and you did it successfully. You did it right and you followed through with your action. Now that was the first thing you did of the day. Now, what are your continued successes? Well, why don't you just start small? How about you make sure you eat a full breakfast every day for the next week? How about you make sure you make it to work 5 minutes early? You do something simple. Make it a simple task. You remember to do this and this every day. Set your alarm for whatever time so you remember to do 10 minutes of meditation a day. Right? And then after doing it for a while, you get successful at it. It makes sense, right? You've succeeded at your task and your goal of doing it, of meditating once in a while, of doing whatever you set your mind out to do that day. And it all started because you set yourself up with the first task. You set yourself up with saying, and with succeeding in the first task. That's what you did. And it's great. And that's what you need to do. Because you must succeed in life. Life is meant to be lived. You must live and do things. And eventually, even if you fail, you will eventually succeed. Isn't it who does that famous quote? Who does the famous quote where 101 inventions? You just do things 100 times and fail 100 times, but on the 101st you did it, and that's because you tried, right? It's not because you were naturally successful at something. It's because you tried to do it. You may fail 100 times, but if you keep trying to do it, keep trying to succeed, you will eventually succeed because you ruled out all the other options for how to not do it. Because you didn't succeed all those other times. So now you learn from those mistakes and was able to achieve your goal by the 101st time or whatever the time it took. And so it's bringing that mentality in, that I will succeed or else mentality. But what else? How else can you live this in your life? How about being honorable? Don't just do things because you want to get attention or you want to draw attention to something or deceive people or whatever. Being honorable is being truthful, being honest, being all these things, being respectful, and because you're not going to get respect if you don't give respect. And giving respect is an honorable thing to do. So you could literally embody this. It's very easy. You can embody honor in your everyday part of life just by being a respectful person, just by being a nice person to people. You don't have to yell at people all the time. Obviously, like we said, remember, like we said, getting mad is a part of life. Getting upset, angry, yelling, it's a part of life. But it's how you learn from it, how you proceed afterwards, how you carry yourself afterwards. And honor is also about how you carry yourself in your every day-to-day life. Honor is about how you carry yourself and how you show yourself, how you present yourself to the world. It's all about how you and the people around you, the world, how you present yourself to the world and the people around you. Because if you present yourself as being honorable, respectful, kind, those people are going to treat you the same way. Now, obviously, we know that that's not always the case. Some people are totally crazy, and no matter how nice you be to them, they'll never be nice to you. Again, that's life, man. It doesn't have to be that way, though. Remember, life doesn't have to be, quote unquote, the way it is. Because you have to go out there and change the world. This is why I and other people always advocate for being involved in your community, for being involved in your local politics. And I'm bad at this too because I'm so freaking busy. I mean, I don't know when I have time for any of that, but we make time. We have to make time. You have to try to make time. That's the key. You have to try to make the time. As long as you try, if I get to it once in a year, dude, at least I tried and at least I followed through with it. That's the samurai mind. That's the mentality you need to have. You may be busy, you may have something going on, but if that's one of your goals, then at least you tried and at least you succeeded once. That's honorable. That's the mentality of the world. Make sure you guys all go out and like the X post. Don't forget. Ads are over on Twitch. Thank the gods. Let's take a sip of coffee before it gets cold. I just love coffee. How you carry yourself is a very important way. Look at our founding fathers, for example. Look at George Washington. George Washington was an incredibly well-rounded man. Did a lot of things: scientist, scholar, educated fellow, farmer, soldier. Did a lot of things. In fact, he kind of embodied the samurai mentality. He was a warrior and yet a peaceful man. He was a soldier and a farmer. He did all these different things. He was a statesman and a father. He was a leader and a husband. Did all these different things. Many, many different things. And yet, he was an extremely well-rounded person. If you look at a lot of accounts during the time, everybody knew George Washington as the soldier. But what was unexpected and ended up being pleasant about George Washington is he was a great dancer. George Washington was an awesome dancer. And being a great dancer allowed him to earn respect among the noble society. Now, he came from a wealthy family, but he wasn't like old school wealthy. Like his family had like decent money, came here, and for a couple hundred years lived here and grew their wealth over time. So it wasn't like, they came from old school European money. But he was good in business, honorable in business. He was, an educated man. He was a great dancer. He read poetry and books. He was literate and educated, well spoken. And these were the things that got him respect amongst the nobles. And not only that, but these were the things that got him respect amongst the soldiers. And not only that, but these were the things that got him the respect that history credits him for today. If you read, there are multiple accounts of one of the first few times as George Washington, the soldier, going to a party. And, this was when he met Martha Washington. And he was dancing, and all the women were impressed, including Martha Washington. And this is a recorded account. We have these records to this day. You could look it up, you could read it, you could watch the retelling of it on the History Channel. I've seen it myself, so I know that it exists. And they have all these incredible accounts of him being a well-rounded person. This is exactly the samurai mind. This is exactly what Zen Buddhists wanted to be about. George Washington was also a man of faith. He went in, there's the accounts of just before Valley Forge of him going out into the woods to pray, to ask God for help and guidance and clarity. And why did he do this? Because he was facing overwhelming odds and he was a man of faith. He was a well-rounded man. He did all these different things. And it's great. And, what's so interesting too is, and there's a story that comes out of the prayer meeting that relates later on into ancient alien theory. Very interesting. That was reported by his assistant, I think it was. Not his assistant slave Billy, but I think one of his like wartime assistants. I forget. It was really, it's really interesting because this is how you embody the warrior mentality, the warrior mindset, the samurai mindset. You have to do it. You have to practice it in your everyday life. It was about, just because you believed in it wasn't enough. Just because you understood it wasn't enough. If you didn't practice it in your everyday life, you were nothing. You had to believe in it. You had to practice it. You had to do all these different things in order to truly embody the mentality, truly embody the way of life that it is. And so when you look at great men throughout history, they did a lot of these things too. If you look even at Marcus Aurelius in Rome, he was known as the philosopher king or the warrior poet. I would say that that's pretty good at embodying the Zen Buddhist way of being both a warrior and a kind person, being a ruthless soldier and a great person. Now, of course, we know Marcus Aurelius' son was possibly one of the worst Roman emperors, if not the worst Roman emperor. But what's so crazy about that is Marcus Aurelius tried to push these beliefs onto the people. He believed that if he could show that he was not only a warrior, not only a politician and a statesman, but an educated leader, an author, a poet, a philosopher, that he would gain not only the respect of the Senate, but also of the people. And guess what? He did. He exactly did. He gained all the respect of the people and all the respect of the army and all the respect of the Senate. All because, not because he believed in these things, but because he embodied these things. Him embodying these things is what it meant to be, is what the Zen Buddhist way was about. You can't just think about these things. You have to go out and do these things. It's about commitment. It's about holding to your commitment and doing all these different things. That's what it's about. And so you have to hold to your commitment. So if my idea is to do this podcast to talk about aliens and the truth and mentalities and philosophy and all of that, as long as I keep doing it, I'm successful at it, according to the samurai way, according to the samurai mind, because you tried and followed through with it. It's not enough to try. It's not enough to believe. And success is not everything. It's the combination of all of them is what the samurai mind is about, the warrior mentality is about. It's all those different things. And it's so crazy because they have it's so I find it's just so I find this topic just so fascinating. Japanese culture and history is one of my favorite topics to study. They are just such a broad-ranging culture that it is just it's just incredible. I love the entire topic and the culture, and especially the samurai way. The warrior way. I mean, it's all about but even I try to embody this in my life because I truly believe in it. But I know that believing isn't enough. This is why it's also important. How do you go about implementing this into your daily life? Well, why don't you start by doing something like making a list and then writing down what you got to do. And when you do them, cross the list off, cross the item off on the list. That's really what you got to do, because writing it down is not enough. Saying you have to do it is not enough. Doing it and crossing it off the list because it's done, that's enough. Even if it wasn't the greatest, even if it didn't come out perfect, say you want to do something simple. You want to learn to be a better cook, right? Well, it ain't going to get better if you order takeout tonight. It ain't gonna get better if you order delivery. If you get Chinese or pizza or something, it's not gonna get better. But if you go out and cook tonight, it's gonna get great. What do? Go out, get your recipe, write down all the items you need, go to the store, buy those items, cook it up, follow the recipe. So what, it didn't come out perfect this time. Make it again next week. Maybe not next week, make it the following month. Doesn't have to be tomorrow, every day in a row. Could be 3 months from now. Make it again. This time, taste it a little better. Make it again. Perfect. Right? Because you tried, you followed through, and you continued on. You continued trying to make it better. That's really the key. That's what it's about. Continuing on going. I didn't get good at cooking from something. I took cooking classes. I learned from watching my grandparents and having my grandparents teach me. And, I took home ec in high school and cooking classes in high school and all of that. Like I did that shit in order to get better. It's not, nobody's born, perfect. No matter how much talent you have naturally, you're still not perfect. And a person who has no natural talent for it at all can still be equally as successful as somebody who has the natural talent for it because they worked hard, because they tried to do it. It has nothing to do with successful versus not successful. It has to do with you working towards the goal, continuously trying for it, continually going on for it, and not stopping, not giving up. Never give up. Never settle. It's not, nothing's good enough for you. And this was the samurai mind. Just because you were successful at it doesn't mean it was perfect. Doesn't mean it was good enough. In fact, it most likely was not perfect, and it was not good enough because you are not a god. You are not a celestial being. You are not a kami. You are not the divinity. You are not any of those things. So you therefore are not perfect. So therefore, you must do it more than one time, more than 5 times, until it's perfect. And even when it's perfect, it's probably not perfect because the gods can still make it more perfect than you. So you have to just keep trying. You have to keep going for it. And as soon as you understand that you're not perfect and you don't need to be 100% successful instantaneously, the peace comes, the happiness comes, the calmness and the clarity comes. You're not as upset anymore. And why? Because you realize just because you didn't succeed today doesn't mean you won't succeed tomorrow. Just because you tried this time and only got it halfway right doesn't mean you won't get it right tomorrow. I mean, I finished a few of my projects. We're doing great, and I set up, look at this, for example. I have if you go on the website, we have, and go under books and stuff, we have the new, the first one is the novel. Well, I've been trying to finish it this whole year, but I've just been so busy, all this stuff, and I keep trying to schedule time for it, and all the time doesn't happen. Well, now I have a new scheduled time for it because I realize it's the only time I got. But the whole point is I didn't stop. Didn't stop trying, didn't stop finishing, didn't stop doing anything. If I just give up and say, oh, I'm too busy, can't do it, sorry. Well, that's not the samurai mind. That's not the warrior mentality. That's not the right way to go about it. That's not being a Zen Buddhist. You can do things and you try and try again. You try harder. You make improvements. You learn from it. You try to do all these things. And just because somebody else did it doesn't mean you can't copy them. Now, obviously, we know you can't copy them, one to one. I mean, there's copyrights and rules and shit about that, legal rules. But maybe not copy is not the best word, but embody what they do, use them as an example, all these different things. Those are the goals. You could use those people to help guarantee your success because guess what? If they worked on it and were successful at it, they probably failed 100 times too and was only successful on the 101st time. Probably. They might have failed 1,000,000 times for all you know. Well, guess what? You don't have to do that anymore. They already failed for you. And not only that, but just because he succeeded the first time doesn't mean he's going to succeed every time. He could have succeeded the first time, and you are going to succeed every other time because you learned from his mistakes. You know what the success is. Now you can make it better. You build upon it. That's really the key. The key is building upon it, commitment, continue on doing things. And, this is why the samurai would always be committed to everything that they did. True warriors are always committed to whatever they do because that's what you're supposed to do. If you have an idea and you want to get something done, the only way to get it done is to commit to it. And so, and it's just these samurai, and in Shintoism, they believe that the kamis are involved in our everyday life. Like a lot of other Western religions, like the Greeks believe that the gods were involved in your everyday life. South American traditions, Native North American traditions did the same. I mean, they all believe that the gods were there in your individual life. So Shintoism believes that even inanimate objects have some sort of soul or spirit to it. And so do other cultures. They're not the only ones. And but what's interesting is, you taking this into account in the samurai mind. You would think that, dude, I lop people's heads off for a living with the sword. What do I need to be worried about any of this for? Well, because you need to, it's not just killing is not the samurai way. It's not the Zen Buddhist way. It's not the belief. So it's so trying to figure out how I want to word the next thing of what I want to continue on talking about. So it's real interesting because when you look at let's word it a different way. Looking at the samurai and their beliefs in the world and how they viewed the world is trying to, I can't, it's not extremely unique, but it is very unique, is what I want to say. Like, there are other beliefs in the world where you could be both a warrior and a peaceful person, no doubt about it. You can be faithful and religious and also murderous. There's no doubt about it. I mean, look at the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar were another group. The Knights Templar were another group. They believed in honor and chivalry. And guess what? They realized that carrying the sword was necessary because so were your enemies. Your enemies were also carrying a sword. Your enemies intended to do you harm. They wanted you gonzo. And so you had no choice. Somebody had to pick up the sword. In the Middle East and in Europe, it was the Knights Templar. In Japan, it was the samurai. It was different cultures in different areas, but they believed the same thing. Somebody, no matter how religious or your beliefs are, somebody has to pick up the sword. And so you inevitably, because of that fact, have to do both things. You have to be a person who is both a warrior and a poet, a philosopher and a statesman, a soldier and a statesman, a philosopher and a killer. You have to do all these different things because that's just a part of life, and if you read also, like I said earlier in this episode, and with Buddha and the spiritual promised land, whoa. If you read into with Buddha and the spiritual promised land, what's so interesting is that Zen Buddhists took it literally what he said. Buddha wanted to create a separate world, a separate dimension, a peaceful plane of existence where there was no more suffering. Well, Zen Buddhists, Japanese people read this before there was Zen Buddhism, and they said, wait a second. The heaven that Buddha is talking about, the spiritual pure land, does not exist in this world. It exists in another place. So therefore, in this world, there's still suffering. It's impossible to be totally peaceful with no suffering or none of that, because life is suffering. Buddha himself said it. Do I post these on YouTube, says Famished? Yeah, so when I post the podcast, it automatically goes to YouTube. Also, it goes wherever podcasts exist. But the video itself, you can only view on Twitch and Kick. Kind of want people to go to my Twitch and Kick more than I want them to go to YouTube, to be honest. Nice. Yeah. So whenever I post the podcast, it goes to all platforms, including YouTube, which I always post right after the show. So it's so interesting because they read right into exactly what it says. And yet in our culture, both in Western traditions and in other cultures, Eastern traditions, they view it as, well, you can achieve this peace, this serenity, this all things in this life. No, that's wrong. That's not what Buddha says. You can be a peaceful person and in your day-to-day life achieve some level of peace and serenity in your day-to-day life, but that doesn't mean that you still won't suffer. That doesn't mean that one day is going to be good and the next day is going to be horrible. You might have 10 days that are good and the 11th, 12th, and 13th day are horrifying. It's still a part of life. You can't, no matter what you do, appreciate that YouTube subscription, bro. You'll see a lot of old videos too. There's a lot of good shit on there. But I haven't posted a lot of stuff. I appreciate that. That's G shit. It's awesome. So see, this is the problem now, because Lumia is not set up right, because it should have showed up in chat that you subscribed on YouTube, even though we're not live on YouTube. Terrible. It should have showed up in this chat on both Kick and Twitch. It should have gone all around. Crazy. I guess we got to fix that too. So, the good news is a bot broken? No, actually, Lumia is probably the best bot that's out there. It's got to, I probably didn't program it right. So, no problem. I'll just figure it out later. I fixed the other problems I had, so we crossed off a couple things off my list. Now, if you joined us for the Thursday stream, I appreciate you. That Ghost of Tsushima game keeps crashing my OBS every time I play it. So I don't know what the hell's up with that, but we'll figure it out. Last time we played, it was the bot just was like literally broke, and I talked about how my list of things to do is like 100 things, and I go, oh great, now I gotta add fixing this freaking bot and my stream deck to the list of things to do. Guess what? Those things are done, fixed. Do all those things, press the stream deck button, there's a noise, like that's the GTA death sound we use for whenever we're dead in games. But it's It's just it's so interesting. So anyway, but so that's the key, right? I have my list of shit to do too. We all do. But I cross the things off. I'm succeeding. Therefore, I'm following the samurai mind, the Zen Buddhist mentality, because I am making the list, planning something, and following through with it. Whether it was 100% successful is not really the concern, because as long as you keep trying. And guess what? If it wasn't 100% successful, try again. You might make it 100% successful. You keep doing it until you're perfect at it, till you could do it with your freaking eyes closed, bro. Like, I could do a lot of things with my eyes closed, but that's because I'm crazy and I practice doing things with my eyes closed. But it's really interesting because these samurai, they continued on with this mentality for hundreds of years, all the way through to even our modern times. The samurai really came to an end. If you've seen the last samurai movie, it's actually a true story and really well done as well. The samurai, they were at a crossroads between modernizing. Japan was at a crossroads between modernizing and maintaining its old way. And they wanted to modernize, and the samurai fought against this. Obviously, we know that they lost, and Japan ended up modernizing all the way up until World War II. But what's interesting is they didn't let go of this warrior mentality. In fact, they kept doing it. They kept trying to succeed, trying to gain new territory, new things, new everything, new foods, getting the best, making it. And, and during World War II, a lot of the Japanese shoguns and the generals and the commanders would warp different mentalities that were written during the samurai times in order to fit modern times, and in order to convince you that it was honorable to be a kamikaze, to do suicide bombing, that it was the honorable thing to do because of, look at our past and our history and our beliefs in the samurai way. The samurai were honorable, and they risked themselves and their lives, so therefore you will be too. And they said this stuff all the time, and people believed it all the time. And yet in our modern times, if you look, the Japanese culture is really embodying the same thing. It's still all about the warrior way. It's all about succeeding and trying. You can go to Japan today, and I still haven't been. It's the number one place I want to go to, even more than Italy. And it's because you could go to an area of it that's hundreds of years old, and you could also go to an area that is so modern that robots are serving you food, and robots are doing this and that, and there to greet you at the door and all this stuff, and it's not even a real person. You have that type of society. You have high-speed trains and all these things, and yet at the same time, you have the ancient traditions of the culture still being shown today. And I argue that this success and rapid modernization and idea of continuing on modernization and being better at it and innovating constantly is part of the samurai mind and the samurai mentality, because continuing your mind and your way to do this is succeeding, trying hard, trying to be better, trying to better yourself, better your society, the people all around you. It's an absolutely amazing concept, because you literally could embody the past and the present and the future all in one state, and not even one person but one entire country. Absolutely incredible. And so it's a wonderful thing, because you look at um the ancient culture, and and the Zen Buddhist way, and it's almost like the fact that you can um continue on and better yourself and better all these other things, and whatever, is what's the most interesting part, because it basically says, in a nutshell, the future is not written down, set in stone. You can continue on and try. It basically allows for you to warp the religious beliefs into your modern day set of times, because the perception of the world 2,000, 3,000 years ago, even 500 years ago, even 100 years ago, is not the same as our perception of the world today. Even 20 years ago, not the same. Even 10 years ago, even last year, our perception of the world is not the same. So the idea that hundreds of years ago, a culture would reinvent itself and allow for itself's future to be consistently reinvented is incredible, because it's almost like you had a view of the future. Now, obviously, they probably didn't, but it's almost like that, because the I keep looking over here because they're doing some crazy shit on that screen. Um, the it's almost like that because of the fact that they, um, allowed for the future to be to grow. Yo, Dead Dick, what's poppin', bro? How you be? Good morning. So it's so fascinating, really, because the world is ever changing. So you could literally embody the same beliefs of honor and chivalry and strength and strong mentality and peacefulness and happiness all together in one, and bring that, no matter if it's 5 years from now or 5,000 years from now, you can incorporate that way of life, that belief, into your into your modern day life, into your modern day world. And it's just so fascinating to me, because well, for all the reasons we've been talking about this whole time. And it's just, when you look into it and you look at the idea of how they can warp the world and shape their mind state and everything, it's really not only, I don't want to say, I'm lost for the word. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to me. The study of the culture and how it evolved over time is absolutely incredible to me. I love Japanese history and culture. It's probably the best one to study, in my opinion. And now, so what's so incredible too is you have these the samurai I talked about before too, is they really emphasize the idea of the individual. It wasn't just about the society and the philosophy of the society. It was also emphasis on the individual. You, as one single person, can make great change in the world. You, as one person, can make astonishing change in the world. And you could do all these things because that's a part of life. And so when you're um being an individual, you don't have to, you don't always need a group to do everything. And you know what? The most honorable thing you could do is do something for the right reason, the right way, even if nobody's watching or nobody notices that it's you. Because going out and looking for credit for all these things, that's not the samurai mind. You're not going out there doing these things to look for respect, to look for beliefs, to look for all these things. You're going out there because it's the right thing to do. You're drawing your sword and defeating this enemy because this guy was going to do something horrible. You saved this person from whatever doom or cataclysm because it was the right thing to do. Not because you wanted to be honored or worshipped or seen as some sort of hero. It was because you were supposed to do it. You were the person who was standing there in the vicinity and did it. And, you know, success on the individual also doesn't always just have to be about truth and justice. It's like we said before, just do what you got to do. Get it done. Get um get the just go out there and be successful in your everyday life, in your individual tasks. One of Buddha's philosophy is if you really want something, you must let it go. And if you deserve it, it'll come back to you. And I remember reading a parable where um, somebody said that they really loved the girl and the girl loved him. It was almost like a Romeo and Juliet story, like they couldn't be together because whatever the family happened, and he decided to let her go or whatever. He let her go. He left her. He went and continued on with his life, and he became this honorable great samurai who was successful in many deeds. And finally the father, who didn't approve of their marriage and union, finally approved of their marriage and union because of his great deeds. And uh and he remembers, and he says, I remember he says in to him, he's like, well, you didn't believe in me from the beginning, you couldn't do this. And he says, well, yeah, because you didn't do anything. You had nothing to go off of. By the way, famished, you on YouTube, do you use, you still here? Do you use shorts? Because I have a bunch of clips I was thinking about putting on shorts, and just like, or reels or whatever on YouTube. Do people, you use that? Because I have a bunch of clips for that. I was thinking about doing that. But anyway, so it's really it was all about doing the father says, well, you didn't have anything to go off of. It's wonderful to have all these ideas and to be a kind person and ideologically successful and whatever, but you didn't follow through with any of it. You didn't do anything. You had the idea of being a nice person. You had the idea of of doing all these things, but you never followed through. There was no proof in what you were saying, so I didn't think that you would be a right fit for my daughter. And that's what the parables are really all about. It's Yeah, it's wonderful to have these nice ideas, but if you as an individual don't go out and do these things, it's meaningless. You could be a nice guy and do all these things and whatever, but if you got nothing going on for you, the girl ain't gonna want it. Vice versa, for a guy. I mean, for me, if your girl does nothing all day, I'm sorry, but I don't care how pretty you are. I don't like that. I like you to have like a commitment, a motivation, things to do, like, dedications, whatever, a passion, something, anything. But the world we live in today, many people are not like that. They do not have a passion. They do not have a belief, a strong background in beliefs, or they just believe whatever they're told. You believe in your religion because that's what your parents said the religion was about, because that's what their grandparents said about religion, because their parents said and their parents said. And that's really the society that we're in today. Everybody just repeats whatever their parents say. I mean, that's the world that we live in today. Nobody goes out there and experiences things. I find something all the time that I heard my parents or my father or somebody say, or grandparents say, or an older generation person say. And I find out later on that wasn't true. That was just what they perceived from their little perspective of their little tiny corner of the earth. Like that's what they perceived, and they just took it as fact of the universe. Like, what, bro? That's not fact of the universe. Like that's literally like just what you believe for a quick second. Like it makes no sense, and so it's just it's crazy, so you know it, but you go out in the world today and people got no beliefs, no personality, no philosophy. It's just all about, going through life like you're a robot. Well, that's not living life. That's not the Buddhist way. That's not the mentality way. In fact, that's inviting suffering. Because if you don't go out there and be the change you want to see in the world, you're going to suffer. Why? Because nothing's ever going to get better, especially not from your perception. If you just perceive that somebody else is supposed to do everything for you and do all this, nothing's going to ever change because nobody's going to do anything about it. Do you think if we didn't have our revolutionaries in America and people wanted to do all these things and change the world and change the country, if we didn't have them go out and actually follow through with it, you think the king wouldn't have kept taxing us and beating us up and maybe even enslaved the whole country? Of course they would have. What are you talking about? Like, the world doesn't change unless you go out and do something about it. Your local community and its politics don't change. And oh, good, I got something's going on with my kick chat on my OBS. That's awesome. Love that. And but anyway, so the fucking OBS, man, I swear to God. So going out there and doing the world and living in the world and being the change you want to see in the world is what it's about. That's why I advocate for local community and getting involved in politics. And people always say, when I was younger, people would say, "Oh, I don't want to talk politics. We get all aggressive, and I don't believe what you believe, so there's no point talking about it." No, that's exactly the reason to talk about it, because you don't believe what I believe, and I don't believe what you believe. But maybe there's some middle ground together. That was the whole point of having a Senate and the different groups, is because nobody believes the same thing. That was the whole point of having random people be on Congress and all these things, and local people be a congressman. Your farmer was able to be a congressman. Your shoe bootmaker, whatever, was able to be a congressman, because everybody's got a different perspective of the world. The world isn't a straightforward one-to-one place and straight and narrow place. It's a very up and down, convoluted, everything changes place. The world is not set in stone, so it's you. If you don't like something, go out and change it. But you can't just go out and say, everybody's an idiot or whatever, because then you're an idiot. You're because you're not listening to what's different about what they believe. And guess what? Let's say you're right and they're wrong, and you want to convince them of it. Well, first, you have to listen to what they're freaking saying, and then you have to interpret it as being what you have to take what they say and say, no, here's the facts, here's the this and that, and continue on from there. And just because you have taken a perception on the facts doesn't mean that your perception on the facts is right. You may have the facts correct. You may have the information 100% accurate, but because you forgot the context, you're incorrect also. So you have to, but the key is you have to be willing to learn, willing to try, willing to change. That's really the key here. That is the samurai mind, the samurai mentality, the Zen Buddhist mentality, the warrior mind. That's what it's all about. It's all about the change in the world. It's all about the doing something, being involved. Getting involved in your local community, volunteering at your local soup kitchen, supporting your favorite streamer or whatever. I don't know. But getting involved with something, doing something. That's what it's all the key for, is trying and committing to it and going for it and setting your goals and achieving your goals. And as long as you try and commit and try again, you have been successful in the samurai mind. Much love, y'all. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. There's no more Sunday streams of games or anything for the rest of the year unless I decide to go live randomly. Sunday I'm dedicating to finishing the book, so make sure you follow on our website, because as more stuff gets done, more stuff will be published and public viewing and all of that stuff. And soon the book will be out. So hopefully by next year, the end of the year, we could get finished publishing and doing all of that. So Sundays are now dedicated to that. There's no more streams on Sundays, and it's going to be awesome. I'm loving it. So also remember to follow on X, because if we ever have something going on, I always post there that it's been going on. And I'll let you know if we have to cancel all of that. Otherwise, we'll catch you on the flip side. We'll see you next week. Much love, y'all. Hope you have a wonderful day, wonderful week. We'll see you. Peace.